Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Strand, and welcome to another episode of Work From Home Warriors. I'm joined today with Marianne. Hi, Marianne. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lauren. It's really great to be here, and good morning, even though I'm on the other side of the world.
And so, actually, where are you in the world?
I'm located in Providence, Rhode Island, which is on the northeast coast of the United States, just below Boston, Massachusetts.
Right. I have heard of Providence, Rhode Island. So can you tell me about what you do?
Sure. My company, Sophia Think Consulting, what we do is we work with organizations that have dispersed teams, remote work, flexible work arrangements. And unlike many companies that are producing technical products for that population, we actually work with the people who are engaging in remote work to help them build people-to-people skills so that they can enable collaboration better, so that they can lead their teams more effectively. So we deal with the soft skills side of remote work.
Okay, that's fascinating. Do you deal largely with the management side, so the team leaders or the team members as well?
We really deal with both. And part of the reason we deal with both is while the team leader is pretty critical, in a remote team, because they really need to be not only mission control, but they have to enable their team people to feel comfortable reaching out to each other and collaborating. When you work from home, you have to be pretty self-directed. You have to be very independently minded, but you also have to understand how to collaborate with people. And if you aren't good socially, then you might be a little awkward with that. And so we work with teams to teach them the best practices for how to connect with people without being intrusive, but also connect with people so that they maintain visibility.
So it's interesting when you say you coach people. So I guess people have their different preferences of style of work and their modes. So for example, there are times, we were talking before we started recording about how when I go into an office, I don't like the laughter and the sound and the talking, but there are other times where I am the laughter and the sound and talking, and I'm sure I'm annoying other people. So when you're coaching teams that work from home, is it something that everybody can do, or is it just something that certain people aren't cut out for and they need to go to an office to be around people physically?
I do believe you and I were talking about this a little earlier, and we were mentioning the fact that, there are some professions that lend themselves a little more easily to remote work. And I would also argue that some personalities, if you can't be self-directed, if you can't really maintain your own schedule, if you're not good at staying on task, or you just need some sort of structure that someone else creates, then remote work is going to be really difficult for you.
And so in those scenarios, is that something that can be overcome through your coaching that you're doing with that to kind of help people get to that?
Well, you can teach people discipline. You can teach people how to manage their schedule. You can actually teach people how to socialize via technology. And this is an important component, because people who are used to working in offices, to your point, and it's actually kind of funny because, I go in an office now, and what I notice is how much time is wasted. And when I'm in my home office, I'm focused. I'm thinking about what has to happen, and I'm on task. And I can teach people those things. My team and I can teach people those things. And what I find really interesting is the transition period for somebody who's moving out of an office into their home office setting, some of the challenges that are associated with that, but where suddenly they're without structure unless they create the structure. So those are things you can teach. You can teach the self-discipline. You can teach the best practices for managing schedule. You can teach people how to leverage technology and build trust over distance. Those things you can teach.
And what about managers? So a lot of the organizations I work with, they talk about flexible working styles and work from anywhere, work from home, and future ways of working, all these fancy different terms. But inevitably, the middle managers and lower managers still want to see a bum on the seat. They want to see their team in and working, because that to them is what work is. It's coming to work. How do you overcome that with a manager and show them that it's more about the outcomes as opposed to the bottom on the seat?
Yeah, and I think that that's an important distinction, right? Because one of the things that I can absolutely do, just like you can do, is we can go to any office in the world right now, and we will see people who are there, physically present, who are surfing the web, or they're walking around and they're not being productive, or they're in a perpetual meeting culture where they're just going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and they're not actually getting stuff done, right? And then if you have to transition out of that culture, then you're struggling, because how do you trust, right? How do you trust that people are getting work done? How do you trust that you're getting this best value out of them? And the first thing we teach leaders in that situation is management by objective, right? So that framework for how do you give people the benefit of the doubt by setting good expectations up front, by having very clear understanding of job responsibilities and timelines and deadlines and who's going to do what, and teaching people basic skills. We're talking about how do you manage meetings differently so that you have a better sense of what the deliverables are that are coming out of those meetings, and who should be in the meetings and who doesn't need to be in those meetings, so just creating more efficiencies and getting leaders to the point where they can trust but verify, right? Where you've got situations where you've got folks that are on your team and you're watching their performance over time, and they deliver. And you also know that if they're not delivering, that you've got to be the one going out there prompting and saying, hey, what's up? What's going on with you? And is there something that you need that's preventing you from getting the deadline done? So
makes a lot of sense. And I think, look, one of the things you mentioned, trust, is, years ago when I ran a company and we were all work from home, I didn't care when my staff worked as long as the job got done.
Yep.
I had kind of a culture of be available between 8:30 and 5:30, but work whenever you want. So when staff actually called and said, hey, do you mind if I leave early to go to the doctor? I'm like, what, leave your home? Yes, go for it. I don't even ask, just go do. How do you get managers to that point of trust? Because that's the challenge that they've got, is, as I said, that with the previous question, is there's this mentality that you sit in an office and you are doing work, as opposed to my staff are off doing things and I don't know, and it comes back. So how do you get that trust? Is it something that is built over time and then you say, okay, now I anoint you and you can work from home? Or is it just put the faith in your team first and hopefully you don't get burnt?
I think that you've got two camps, right? You have one camp where you actually have to retrain people, where they are used to managing by line of sight. And line of sight in relation to, I can see your bum in that seat, and as a result, I now have convinced myself that you're being productive. And so in those particular cases, that's going to take a little bit more time, because we have to actually break bad habits. And then we have to teach those particular people how to create the structure that allows them to be able to have very clear expectation guidelines that they can follow up on a routine basis until they get to the point where they build that trust, right? And then you've got the other folks, people like myself. I was used to, in my corporate gigs before I started my companies, I was working with very large international teams, and we're all over the world. And so it's not reasonable to expect that every single person is going to be available in the same time frame, because we got lots of time zones. So to a certain extent, you've got some of us that really kind of think of ourselves as global citizens, and we're not getting caught up in the what are you doing this second? But we're really caught up in, can you deliver when you said you were going to deliver? And part of that, I think, is, when we start with teams, the first thing that we're doing with them is we're sitting down saying, okay, what are the ground rules, right? What are the basic protocols that we're going to use amongst ourselves so that, can I text you? Can I contact you within a certain time period? Can I what channels do we prefer to use? Do we all have access to the systems? How many times are we going to come together? So it's like, create the framework. And then what you're doing once you have the framework is then you're holding people accountable to the framework, just like you're holding people accountable to deliverable schedules that are on your project plan, just like you're holding people accountable to their job description, and build your job description so it doesn't say you have to have your bum in the seat.
Sounds very similar to something I wrote with another MVP, Sue Hanley, called the collaboration contract, which is not about the tools. It was about agree to how you work, and it wasn't so much about working from home or remotely. It was just, hey, you're a team, sit down, agree to things, agree to what expectations are and what realities are, so that if somebody sends you a message at 7 p.m. at night, you don't think, oh, I've got to respond to this because it's 7 p.m. and they've sent me a direct message. So what do you see when you, do you work with organizations that have attempted to do these kind of remote work and working from home environments and haven't really put any structure, and then you kind of have to repair them and establish it right? Or is it more of a case of organizations are smart enough to say, we better get the foundations right before we do this?
I would say most people don't get the foundation right. And the reason why is because they don't necessarily have a good process for putting clear expectations, building clear expectations with their team, even when they're in the office together, right? And then now you had all these people who are in offices, and then we started getting a global economy, and now we have dispersed teams. And so you may not work from home, but you're still working remotely because your boss is sitting on another continent. And we did a lousy job with that, right? And so, when you think about working from home, it's just an extension of all the lousy jobs that we did when we built different buildings. So now we have a big campus and we have a big tall building and there are security badge requirements on every single floor. So you can't go to someone's meeting because you can't get into the place. And to a certain extent, that virtual team concept, has been going on for a long while, and companies have really been doing kind of a crappy job with it. So I don't think we have a good process in general, for this. And the majority of organizations that we work with are struggling a lot because it's always been the people side that's the harder side, right? Lorian, it's that people are messy business, right? And
yeah.
They're not cooperative, they're illogical, they're emotional, so it's easy to avoid them. And then you have the stigma of soft skill training, right? When we had the recession, everybody dumped their training departments. Technical training can be, financially rationalized, but the soft skills always go first, right? And that's the problem. Because the soft skills are actually the fundamental piece, because the tool can be great, but if the people behind the tools can't get the job done, then you have a terrible situation for everyone.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I guess I see that myself with Microsoft Teams, where people get it, they can figure out how to like and reply and chat. And a lot of organizations pick it up and think that they can do it well themselves. And Microsoft kind of facilitates that thought as well. But then there's great, but have you figured out how you work as a team first before you look at this fancy, shiny new tool that does help you work as a team, but you actually have this, do you know when to chat? Because, for example, you can put Teams on your mobile phone, and I'm using Teams as the example, but I know Slack and all the others and can do it as well. But as I said before, if I get a message from my boss at 7 p.m., does this mean I need to respond to it? Or from my peer, do I need to respond now? Can I just say, oh, well, they've sent me a message, we've agreed, it's, if it's urgent, they'll call me. One of the points you mentioned before, being global citizens and having managers in different continents. What are the challenges you see with those kind of dispersed teams where people are working in different time zones, especially in countries the size of America or Australia, where the country alone straddles multiple time zones? What are the challenges you see there around those kind of getting the people skills right?
Well, I think, to a certain extent, part of it is reminding people that they're dealing with other humans. And so while you and I might not be physically present with each other, we were talking earlier about your wife and your kids and how do you work from home and avoid distractions. And I have a husband and have the same sort of issue when he's in the house. How do you kind of manage that? And so to a certain extent, you and I are actually making a human connection. And I think that's a really important component, because it's really easy in a global team to forget and to just kind of focus on the differences. Maybe it's because of an accent or a cultural issue, or you say football and I say football and they mean two different things, right? And and yet at the same time, the plain fact is that you and I share more than we have differences. And so how do you, as a leader of a team, how do you as an organization help your people to bring the humanity in? And I think that that's really hard sometimes in a traditional business environment, because a lot of us were taught, when we were younger, that, business is business and personal is personal. And I have a firm belief that, there is no such thing as work-life balance. It's work-life integration, right? And if you work remotely, you got to integrate it. And that means that you're going to see me sometimes when I just got back from the gym, if you call me ad hoc. Or if, you and I are talking and you're in Australia and I'm in Providence, it's 9 a.m. where you are. It's 5:30 in the afternoon where I am. And so we might both be having a glass of something, but yours might be breakfast and mine might be dinner. And so how do you bring the human element into it? Because that's the key, right? Because if we're humans and we like each other, then, if we're humans and we like each other, then we're much more likely to do stuff for each other.
And I think that human element is a really good point there. A lot of people I see, so for example, in Microsoft Teams, we have the ability to background blur. So you can't see what's behind me because my I've got laundry up, or my room's unsightly. My view is I don't care. You're a human being. Unless there's private things in your life behind you, I really don't care if you're wearing gym sweats. But I'm a person who's been doing this for a long time. So to me, as you said, we're making a human connection. How do you get people to be comfortable with that human connection and to kind of look beyond the corporate attire, must be wearing a shirt on the top and have a plain background wall behind me?
Well, I think, there's two things, right? One is you got to read your audience, because, if you want credibility with your audience, then you got to understand, what's going to be acceptable to them and what's not acceptable to them. And I have people that I've been working with for 4 years that I'm probably going to take more latitude with than if I'm working with a relatively new client, and in my interactions with them, I'm getting the vibe that, they have a particular corporate culture that they respect. And so, respect people's house, right? If you're going to go in someone's home, to a certain extent, if you're going to work with a company or you're going to work in a team, then what's the company culture? What's the team culture? Things like that. Then you have the second piece, right? So you got the first piece, then you got the second piece. And the second piece has to do with, what kind of expectations do you set up front? So we're kind of going to go back to, what kind of company do you want to build? My company is virtual. So I've got people in different parts of the United States, and I'm really more interested in the outcome that they're delivering, right? But at the same time, I've also gone through periods of time where I've had people who don't meet the grade, right? And so you have to manage that. But I always tell my clients, the people that I'm working with, who are getting obsessed about the fact that folks from home are out of sight. I'm always saying to them, well, have you ever had an employee that's failed in the office? Have you ever had to fire somebody or had somebody who didn't perform, and those sorts of things? And so part of this is how do you get people used to stuff? Well, you have to actually introduce them to it, and you have to bring it to their attention. And whether it's work from home habits versus office habits, whether it's sort of over time getting them a little bit more comfortable with doing different things, whether it's we've got folks that are team leaders that they get everybody on a webcam, and the first thing that they do with new members is they have the new members give them a tour of their home office, so that there's a visual. We've talked to other folks who do crazy stuff like, they do the Friday night have a beer at the end of work, and they're just doing it in a virtual environment. And you've got other people who've done things like everything from ice cream socials to virtual lunches, right? Some sort of and I think that that's kind of the key. You got to actually get people to the point where they can feel that it's acceptable, that it can be built into the culture, but you kind of have to do it based on what the client, culture is, and what's, you start from someplace and then you sort of gradually add stuff over time. So it's a lot of change management stuff.
And that's the buzzword these days, is change management. And I think that people are starting to realize it's actually one of the most important things they need to be doing as part of any transformation. It's not just about the tools and the systems, it's about the people. And future ways of working and future workplace is not about your intranet and your communication tools. It's about your people and how they work. And I feel, in all honesty, we could probably talk about this for hours on end, and you bring out your wine. It's probably a little bit early for wine here. I mean, I could probably be tempted. So how can how can people get in contact with you, and what's like one of the things they should probably bring in their mind to the conversation if they were to reach out to you?
Yeah, we're pretty passionate about remote work because it comes in lots of different form. And while we're kind of talking about work from home, I think of remote work more broadly. And so the organizations that come to us are organizations that are saying to themselves, I want to adopt this type of work because my new employee base demands it, or because, it makes more sense from a cost perspective. And yet, how do I do that? And so the first thing is be clear about the fact that you are interested in flexible work arrangements and everything that entails. And then when you contact us, be open to the fact that we're going to focus on the people side of things. That, in some ways, Microsoft Teams is a great product. Microsoft 365, at this point is it's just been developing like crazy and is a really great platform. But the people behind it are really going to make or break your flexible work programs. And I'll be happy to send you the link to our website so that you can flip it up for folks, and then people can reach out. And we love talking to people who are interested in this or who are engaging in it and who are struggling with it.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully a lot less people will be struggling with it over time, because they'll be working better and smarter and more effective.
Yeah, well, that's my goal in life. This is actually my mission in life. My mission in life is to help the people side of the remote work world be recognized for their contribution and to be validated as a valid way of working, and then also to prep them with the skills so it's pleasurable, so that they actually enjoy what they do.
I think it's a noble outcome. I have the same from a technology side of things, and hence why I'm doing this video series. So thank you very much for your time. I really hope people have learned from this. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and experience with the audience.
My pleasure. And I hope you have a great, wonderful day now that you're at the start of yours.
Yeah, and I've only been going for 2.5 hours, and it's 9:30 a.m. Thank you very much. Talk soon.
Thanks very much.